What is going on, everybody? BobbyFi with my man Eric Sheets Haber. We are going to be talking a little MLB today. I'm coming off of a not so great MLB night. Just didn't get anything quite right, and somehow my favorite plays who went off like Stanton and Judge, I didn't end up playing as much. So I kind of got a little sloppy there at the end. I think I may have spread out a little too much on yesterday's slate. That was my sum up of it. How about you?
I played one lineup on DraftKings, wasn't close. I played one lineup on FanDuel, and I cashed in half of them, didn't cash in the others. I did not. I missed cashing the Monster by 1 point. I scored decently, but it was a high scoring night, and it just wasn't meant to be. Just ready to.
It was good shot. Mookie just hit a home run on the first pitch.
I think we like that, right?
I mean, we like it to 42% of people, but I've got 100% of them, so yes, it can't be bad.
Dude, I like it. If I have it, I really don't care how many other people have it, right?
And I know, isn't that weird? Once it gets going, it's always great. It's a bonus if nobody has it, but.
All I'm gonna say is I'm tied. I'm in first place in 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, there it is. Tied for first all over the place.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, but then let's see what happens with Castillo's first batter. That'll change it all.
All right. Well, let's get to it. We got a little 6-gamer, which I think is interesting. And the truth is, these little slates that I sort of like, even as I'm doing them, I feel kind of gross about like some of my plays that I have to make. But Sheets, these have been the time for me anyway. On the Wednesdays and Thursdays on the smaller slates, I've been crushing on that. Yeah, not yesterday, it was a bigger slate, but in general, these are the ones I've been doing really, really well on. So I'm hoping to replicate that. We've had a win on Thursday in three weeks in a row here, of at least a 5K win or more in first place. So I'll take it. Hopefully we can do it again. Why don't you pull up your screen and we can take this game by game, because I think we've got some interesting decisions in pretty much every game except for the first one.
Is it a decision in with respect to the weather or no?
No, just interesting decisions, because I think it's going to be just so heavy chalk on Minnesota and New York, which are my favorite stacks, of course. But we have to try and find a way to get different on this 6-gamer. So whether we do it with pitching, whether we do it with our secondary stacks, or whether we decide to fully go out and stack another team like a Miami or something like that, and maybe use the Yankees and Twins as fillers.
You got some against Houston tonight?
So that's an interesting one. I actually don't mind Houston, but I mean, Eduardo Rodriguez, I have respect for as a pitcher. So I'm a little bit, and they're expensive, and I like them. I mean, I love Bregman individually, but I don't know that I'm going to end up fully stacking against Rodriguez, who's pretty solid, but I'm open to it. We'll get into it.
By the way, how about that Mets revenge last night?
Yeah, seriously. Chalk in baseball hitting when it goes off. It's always annoying. I mean, I'm saying that it's annoying right now, but the truth is, I played a pretty chalky Dodgers team today, so I can't be too upset about it, I guess. But, but yeah. Anyway, so all right, let's talk about it. First game is we have Washington, San Francisco, and I think that it's going to be hard for me not to play Scherzer on FanDuel everywhere, and I'm pretty sure on DraftKings and most of my lineups. I don't care about chalk when it comes to certain things. I understand San Francisco can be pesky. Maybe we can make some other arguments, but just the floor and the ceiling, I don't really know what else we're doing if we're just fading Scherzer in this spot. I think if you play this out 100 times, you're going to want him like 80 out of the 100, maybe higher. Or need him. I'm sorry.
I don't know. I don't know. I'm down on FanDuel with maybe playing Trevor Rogers. I don't know.
Okay. I can get behind that.
I mean, look. Like you said, I mean, he's, Scherzer is the best play, right?
Right.
But I don't know. I mean, I can get Trevor Rogers against Colorado at less ownership.
Yep.
It's possible.
Mm-hmm.
And dude, San Francisco's like the best team in baseball. You know what I mean? It's not exactly like cupcake matchup here. I know that Scherzer's matchup proof and all that stuff, but I mean, I'm going to play Rogers against Colorado, and someone else will play Washington against Scherzer in San Francisco, and Scherzer will outscore me most of the time, but not all the time.
Yeah.
I will say something else about FanDuel while we're talking about it. I have no problem, if not no problem, but again, you're not supposed to pay down for pitching, but we'll get to it. But I'll play Frankie Montas maybe at 7,400 there. And I don't think I'm not gonna. I don't think I'm gonna. I just don't think that I'm gonna lock him in. I think it's harder to. Well, I want to say harder to fade him on DraftKings, right? So I actually want to play both of those guys on DraftKings if I can. But I think likewise, I think if you do play, the more traditional thing of like paying down for, I don't know, Montas or Minor or something like that with your SP2, I don't know. I'm going to suggest that Rogers is as good of a play just for kicks at 12:45 p.m. We'll see if I'm still on that at 6:45. Give some people to argue about for a couple of hours.
There you go. Well, let's start off with the first game, because I actually think that one of the options you can go about, and it's not pretty, but if you want to get different, because on DraftKings especially, I think you're just going to see a whole lot of Rogers and Scherzer, and with some Montas and stuff. This is a weird, like, I have some interest in Washington bats, but I also could make an argument for DeScalfani at 6,300.
All right.
Allows you to open things up a little bit. He's not going to be high owned. And Washington is, okay, they're a weird lineup. They've got guys they've got plenty of strikeouts, and then they've got weirdly, these contact guys, and then they've got Soto and Turner, who are just awesome in general. I don't think they're going to get played much. So I think Soto as a one-off is an awesome tournament play, because how are people going to play the Yankees and play Soto? It's basically impossible without fading Judge and Stanton. And I will just say that this is going to be a controversial take. I think Juan Soto, when healthy, is every bit as good of a real-life hitter. Now, he doesn't have necessarily all of the power those guys do yet, but I think he's as good, or no, I'm not just going to say it. He's a better hitter than both those guys, in my opinion. So I love Soto. I think he's a terrific tournament play, and I think Trey Turner is going to end up making some sense at shortstop if you can afford him. I also think Schwarber is in the mix as well. So I'm looking for interesting ways to get different, and this is one of the spots, both with the either playing DeScalfani or playing a little mini stack, even just one-offing the guys I mentioned. But Soto's number one, but it's going to be hard to get him in and play the Yankees, because you just can't do it. And also the Yankees, you want their outfielders. So the position and the price are going to be tough for people to do.
I don't know. I mean, I like Washington here a little bit. I do have Yankees, Minnesota, and Houston as my top three, but I mean, I think they're a legit second tier option for Washington. I just kind of threw five guys in there just for the hell of it. And you already mentioned Soto, Schwarber. Turner's not cheap, but he just makes everything go, right?
Right.
Harrison, Josh Bell. I mean, you could certainly do this, and I'm probably, again, depending on how many lineups I play, I'll have no problem with that. I mean, I don't know about chalky Yankees. I think chalky Yankees have not been kind to people over this season. So I mean, when the Yankees have hit, it's been when people are like, God damn it, why didn't I play the Yankees? You know what I mean? When people are like, I'm totally playing the Yankees, they haven't really hit. As far as this is my memory trying to guide this, not my numbers or anything like that. It just seems that way. So 6-game slate. I mean, like as owned as you think a team could be, it's probably going to be more, right? Because it's a 6-game slate. I don't know. Right. So I'll try to find something else. So I'll definitely be into Washington as a possibility.
I'm into it. Right now I've got them partly due to ownership. I think they'll be the lower owned. So I do like, but I don't know about it. I don't know if I need the full stack. I think it's mostly the guys I mentioned for me.
Okay.
Colorado, Miami. This is going to be a tough spot on DraftKings to fade Trevor Rogers, as I mentioned before. You've got the best hitters, one of the best pitchers umps in baseball, in Ben May, and you've got just a really, really, really weak Colorado offense. I'm curious what the ownership will be, because if it's not like 40 or 50%, I think that's like too little. Like, I just think
I have it really early. So my real early thing has both Scherzer and Rogers at 45%.
Both Scherzer and Rogers at 40. I think Scherzer's going to be higher, but yeah, I get that. That makes sense.
Yeah,
I think Scherzer, that it feels like that early 45% turns into like 80% by the end of the day.
It could be.
But the other thing you can consider doing here, it's always, nobody wants to. We don't usually like to attack Colorado pitchers away from Colorado because it just they're the reason their numbers are what they are is largely because they're in Colorado. Chichi Gonzalez doesn't walk a ton of guys, so I don't know about a full stack. He does give up power. I'm definitely interested in Miami, but I can't figure out exactly who I would want to even play. That's sort of why it's tricky. But I think that the obvious spot, the best one is probably Corey Dickerson, maybe Adam Duvall. They have a high run total. They're, it's a fine spot, like to try and get different. I just don't know that there's any individual player that truly stands out to me. Starling Marte is another one will be super low owned because of the high price, but rather just play Soto. But yeah, I mean, it definitely stands out as being a spot we could attack. I just don't have a whole lot that I love. And one thing to keep in mind is Colorado's bullpen. Not that it's going to matter so much in this game, but just keep in mind they don't have lefties. They may have called somebody up, but I don't believe they have a lefty in their bullpen. I'm sure they by now they may have called somebody up, but still, it will be one or two guys who just got called up, which in general is a spot where you kind of want to play the lefties, but there's only three lefties in this lineup for Miami. So it's just not like it's a spot where I expect them to score some runs, but I don't know if I really want to play these guys hitting singles and stuff on this slate.
That makes sense to me.
Is there anything trying to think about to get different against Trevor Rogers? Nobody really stands out except for the potentially, if Story is in fact back in the lineup, I guess that's a really good play against Rogers if you're not using Rogers. 5.2 Story just incredible against lefties in general. That would be the one that stands out, and Jonathan Daza also is kind of interesting. The one thing that's hard about Rogers, about trying to pick on him, is he doesn't really give up anything. So
aside from that,
no, I mean, I'm trying to get different. It's a weird slate because it's a 6-game slate that feels like a 3 games or a 2-game slate.
Yeah.
So I'm just trying to speak through everything. I think that there is a chance that some of these Miami guys and maybe Trevor Story would be in play, but I just don't love. I would rather, I think, to try and get the Washington side of things at low ownership.
We'll start talking about this. So I was going to mention. I already mentioned Houston, and we'll talk about them in this upcoming game. When you sweat Houston, it's a really interesting sweat when you sweat in the Houston bats because you two totally different sweats between like Bregman and Altuve. Like Bregman never swings, like ever. Okay, and this is like my own just like observations, right? And Altuve like never takes a pitch, like ever. And they're two totally different types of sweats. Like Altuve, you're afraid of him like striking out like a wild one with like the bases loaded and nobody outs. Or like, dude, just make freaking contact. And Bregman, you're afraid of like second and third and freaking taking a freaking walk for no reason. You know what I mean? So but that's why these guys. That's why the Astros are so good. You have like these.
Because it doesn't really. I know Altuve is famously will chase after first pitches and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Swing 2-0, 3-0, all that stuff. But he walks a ton.
I guess.
He actually walks more than Bregman, I believe.
That's so funny.
But it's one of those things. I know what you're talking about exactly.
Yeah, because he swings it so hard, Altuve. Yeah. It seems like he's like swinging more.
Yeah. So I think this is the spot. I didn't like, again, these ownership projections can't be right. It's just not possible. Because if really no one's going to play Houston, which is definitely not going to be the case, that no one will. Bregman is I think he's my third favorite individual bat on the slate. Also has hit, I will use things like BVP in these situations. He's had some experience and has hit Rodriguez really hard. And I mentioned how much I like taking Houston in Boston in general because they score runs like they did again last night. So I would say that Correa, Bregman, Altuve are all firmly in play, but Bregman is the priority for me.
Fact of the matter is, Bobby, I mean, like I just put in Rodgers and Scherzer together, right? I put some Houston guys in. The fact that I could do this without like breaking the sweat and have 3,600 left just goes to show you how chalky both those pitchers are going to be. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
You're just going to be able to do this. And if you could do it with Houston, I'm sure you could do it with the Yankees. You know what I mean? Like there's just stuff you could do, and both those pitchers can be pretty chalky.
Yeah, so I actually think there's a spot in this game you can get different, like with the pitching and playing Greinke.
Look at that. Okay.
I mean, we talk about how Greinke's not a great DFS pitcher. It doesn't matter if he's throwing complete games. First of all, I don't hold it against him that he only had 3 strikeouts in a complete game against Toronto. I just give him the credit for dominating Toronto, because Toronto doesn't strike out. Then he's got San Diego before that. He only had 4 strikeouts, but he pitched 8 innings. Then he had the Dodgers before that, which he had 6 innings, 5 Ks. And then before that, it was Oakland. He had pitched 8 innings, had 8 Ks. The strikeouts are definitely not what you want from an upside standpoint, but he's 7,800 now against a pretty righty dominant lineup, which he does tend to give it more power, but he also has a higher strikeout rate against. And this Boston lineup, like, it's weird because they do put up runs. They've got some strong pieces in there. We'll see if Verdugo's back in the lineup today. That would make them a little better. But you have it's not like Danny Santana, Marwin Gonzalez, Bobby Dahlbeck are guys that we should be terrified of. And there's some strikeouts in there, especially with Dahlbeck and Santana. So then you got Vasquez really struggling this year. My guess is this projected lineup is wrong, and they get Kiki Hernandez because he's the one guy who he played with Greinke before, and he hits him pretty well. But I'm sort of I think that people are going to play the Boston side, and I definitely prefer the Houston side. I kind of like Greinke as a pivot.
Okay.
But I mean, so the individual JD Martinez is going to be popular, and it's partially because the power that Greinke's given up to righties. I'm okay with trying to skip JD Bogart's endeavors today. It's a little nerve-wracking always on these small slates when especially JD is too cheap, but I'm okay with going against it a little bit and playing the Houston side of it more than the Boston side. Although Rodriguez is probably the higher strikeout pitcher, and maybe you could argue that we should be talking about him as an option, and maybe we should. But the truth is, he hasn't. He's gone 6 innings, 3 times in 12 starts. Only put up his only games of 20 came back in April of 20 fantasy points. So against Houston at home, I don't see this as being a great spot, but I think that both he and Greinke are your natural pivots off of the obvious combo of Rodgers and Scherzer.
For Toronto, Chicago, Ryu's a good enough pitcher where I don't want to play the White Sox, and the White Sox are good enough hitters that I don't want to play Ryu. So with that same logic, Toronto's really good hitting team, and Keichel's, you could argue that he's okay at limiting damage still. But I don't know, man. Toronto's rough. Is Toronto might be a team to consider. I mean, I had him ranked just below some of these teams, but they kill the ball. Now again, they're out of the Little League park they play in, but maybe Toronto should be a team that we look at.
Definitely. I completely agree. I'm actually very surprised that the run projection, the Vegas total is so low on them. So I do think Toronto is right there with Boston, and they've got a weaker pitcher, and you've got a bunch of, you've got a no strikeout lefty against a team that theoretically should smash left-handed pitching. Not even theoretically, just.
They've priced Bichette down now, huh?
They priced, Bichette's, he's been struggling, so they priced him down. But I love Bichette. Bichette, Vlad, and Teoscar would be my favorites, with Grichuk being the next one. And again, it's going to be hard for them to get too much ownership today. So I actually think that Toronto, just because they're a better hitting team, if you could get like 2 Toronto bats, a Soto in, or 2 or 3 Toronto bats and a Soto, and then a 4-man Yankees or something, or maybe a 3-man Yankees, maybe you get a 3-3-1-1 or something, or a 3-3-2 with 2 Minnesotas. I'm just sort of thinking out loud about how you could build to try and get a little bit different, but I do like the Toronto power bats. I forgot Marcus Semien as well, but I think the other guys are a little more of a priority for me.
You can get a 2K catcher out of that if you want from Toronto also.
It's true. You also have another 2 point whatever K1 in the next game, though. That's going to be pretty tempting.
Yeah.
But I agree with you. I mean, we can go ahead and I'm fine with going that route with Riley Adams. Yeah, I think Toronto is interesting. And I actually think that the White Sox, like, I mean, like they're 15-1 against left-handed pitching this year. Okay. So if you're betting this game, you'd naturally want to just bet on the White Sox. I think they're 15-1. At least they were at one point, I believe. Tim Anderson makes perfect sense to me as a one-off play. So does Abreu, but I just prefer the Toronto guys a little bit above them because Ryu is a better pitcher. I mean, I can't believe this game is a pick'em. I really would think that you'd think Toronto would be favored, except for the fact that you look at the White Sox don't lose against lefties ever. Like, anyway, it's kind of an interesting. As far as betting goes, you'd think that you'd think Toronto would be a pretty significant favorite here, but they're not. So I'm not as high on the White. I mean, I'm not going to end up with as many of the White Sox, but I do like them as one-offs, particularly Anderson, Abreu, Mercedes. Those would be the guys I'd look at as one-offs for the White Sox.
Okay. All right. I am going on record here. I'm going with the Yankees. The Yankees are a freaking fade for me. I'm not doing this.
Oh my goodness.
I'm not doing this. I'm not doing it against Happ. Happ is not. First of all,
he's awful. He might.
I don't want to hear that.
No, you haven't watched him pitch. I mean, I'm not kidding you. Like, he has no velocity anymore at all. He's lost like 5 miles an hour on his fastball. He can't strike anybody out, which is the Yankees' biggest weakness. And he gives up a ton of power. He's averaging like 1.4 home run. So it's actually, it equals out to over 2 per 9 innings. And now you've got the most powerful righty hitters. So I'm not going to fade them, but I love the thinking. And if you don't like them, you can jump on the other side of this game against the Yankees. The one thing I'd say is the Yankees bullpen game shouldn't be as enticing. I'm a little, again, the run total really, really high here. I do like these Twins, but for me, it's going to be Trevor Larnach is my favorite. It's going to be the cheap ones mostly. I think Polanco's fine at short at 4.1. He just sort of fits in. And then you've got, but Kirilloff and Larnach are 2 of my favorites, and I'm sure that I'm not going to be alone in that. I think Larnach on FanDuel is an awesome play at 2.4. You can include Nick Gordon in a mini cheap stack and play. You can actually do a 4-man stack, and that's what I did a little bit of, depending on who's catching, whether it's Rortvedt. If it's not Rortvedt and it is Jeffers, I like it better, but they're both really cheap, and you could play a 4-man stack without spending more than 2.7 on a player, and then you can compare it with whatever you want. And that's how you can play the expensive pitchers easily also. So that's sort of the way I'm treating them, is playing the cheap guys. And then I really like Miguel Sano as a one-off. I know he's been struggling and the price has come down. But he's homered in 2 out of the last 4 games. And when he tends to get going, he really gets going. The Yankees are maybe this is meaningless to talk about and it's too obvious, but Stanton is, I mean, as good a bet to hit a home run today as anybody, pretty much as any day. I love Stanton today, and I love Judge, who's a little more expensive, but I think those are just 2 obvious ones. I really wish these early morning projections just didn't come in at all, because I'm seeing the projected ownership and it's just not real. They've got no Yankee above 9%, and there's no way that's going to happen.
I have all of them. I have Frazier at 13%. I have Stanton at 15%.
Oh, that's
DeLeMahieu.
I'll play them. Let's load up. As long as they're under 25%.
Right. So hold on. So DeLeMahieu 15. Because I have one. You want to know why? Because that one freaking source is like skewing everything by having these guys all under 5%, like the guys you're mentioning. So,
yeah, exactly.
So the actual ownerships, I have Judge at 24, pretty much. Like, you look at my board over here, right? So if you take this column, right, like these are really like where people are. This is really what's going to happen. You know what I mean? 25% of these guys. So the Yankees, they're all going to be over 15%. Every one of them,
right?
At least.
I
don't know. I got 3 games ago, Happ 10 strikeouts, and he played against.
We should say it's against Cleveland. Every time a lefty's against Cleveland, we should say it's against Cleveland. They just can't hit.
It was against Cleveland.
Yeah.
You're going to play playing the Yankees. He's going to bring his best, whatever that means. You know, he played for the Yankees for 5 years, whatever it was.
Mhm.
And he's going to pitch his best. I don't know what that means. That means he may be knocked out in the first inning. I'll tell you guys what, just a test to see if any of you guys are listening and will pay attention. So you guys know my screen name by now, like M Behaves, right? So if you guys log in and somehow want to look at any of my lineups for today on DraftKings, I'll be playing probably the 555. I'll be playing the lottery, whatever it is. If you find any lineup with more than one Yankee in it, I will give you $500. There's literally no chance.
Oh, Sheets, I'm loving this.
Yeah,
Look at
there's
you.
literally no chance.
I'm
So
loving it.
I'll give people a shot to catch me lying or whatever it is. And this is how I force myself to do what I know is best. Okay, ready to move on?
Yes, sir.
So this next game is the game of the SP2s, right? I think, like, if you don't want to play the double, the double pitching, I think that you should probably play one of these guys. And I think if you were real super duper psycho, you could play them both. I think these are the two natural guys that I think are in play. By the way, we didn't mention we didn't talk about Ryu. Do you like Ryu, by the way, back at the end of the game as a pivot off the other expensive guys, or not really?
I get it, and he always can throw a gem every now and then, so I would consider it. But like, it's not like there's no other options on this slate. Like you said, both these guys in this game I think are really interesting. I don't love taking pitchers against KC, but I think Montas is fine, and I think that Minor is fine. I'm a little more interested in the bats on the Oakland side in this game, and especially Mark Canha, who just completely owns Mike Minor. He's one of my favorite one-offs. I don't see people going to him at all because I can't imagine how you're paying up. And again, with the Yankees, so I'm playing him with one of Judge or Stanton and then Larnach as my main outfield. So I really like Canha, and Canha and Bregman are the two guys who stand out as my favorite one-offs. You could throw Soto into the mix as well, but I love Canha here. And I wouldn't, I wish that Pinder was still so cheap, but I do like Chapman a little bit. And that's most of my interest in the bats there. But I think I totally agree that I could see Minor having a good game here. I could see Oakland. I could see Montas having a good game. So they definitely are pivots off of the Trevor Rogers chalk, and I don't think they're going to be completely unowned at all. But they both make sense. I would probably, it's weird, I like the A's hitting side better, but I probably lean Minor a little bit over Montas just because the A's will strike out more.
Okay.
So yeah, so that's where I'm at. And so, just to sort of, so I think that like Washington, Toronto are the pivot stacks for me. Minnesota, I don't consider a pivot stack because they're going to be owned as well. The Yankees and Minnesota are my favorite, but I will be mixing in the Washington, Toronto bats, and maybe even doing like a 2 or 3 man with the Yankees and then a 2-man with the Minnesota, and then maybe I'll fully stack Toronto. I think something like that is sort of what I'm looking at right now to get different. Because it is going to be hard to get different, but make sure to try and look at ownership projections as close to lock as possible. We'll be with you guys at 6 Eastern, so we can go through all that. But just to recap, Rogers and Scherzer are my 2 favorite pitchers, and after that I would go a combination of Minor. I'd give a little edge over Montas. I think they're close. Greinke, I'd give an edge over the cheap DeScalfani, but I could see DeScalfani having a decent game at no ownership. And on the small slate like this, I think he's an interesting tournament play.
Yeah, so we got some action here. Hold on, let me just see something.
Yeah.
Dude, we got some action here. You got to root against your man here.
Against who?
You got to root against your Muncie character here. Oh, that better not go out, or you're gonna have a problem because M. Behaves is gonna be in first. Get out! No, foul. Damn it.
Oh, right there with you.
You're right here, right? And I'm right here.
Yeah.
But I got the Muncie. We'll see what happens. I'm like a little delayed because I got it up on another. Oh, but you went with. Oh, that's right. You went with the Rise. So Castillo struggled in the first inning. By the way, he had a hit by bat. He had a walk, but then he fought his way out. He struck 2 guys out. Then he got through the second unscathed.
Well, hopefully we have a nice little sweat going on later on, or a win by the time we do our show. But I think that pretty much sums up where we're at. Again, Rogers, Scherzer, and then Yankees, Minnesota, Toronto, then Washington as the pivots. Soto, Schwarber, Bregman, Canna, Stanton, Judge, best one-offs in my opinion.
All right, so Bobby, you'll fire up an NBA one?
Yes, I will. I'll shoot it right over.
Sounds good. Talk to you later.